Hey, everybody. It's the 1st of February, 2023. This is Plutus PBL Live Coding. We get together twice a week at 14:30 UTC to talk about what we're learning together. Different people have a chance to present on Wednesdays, and on Thursdays we get together and we plan some next steps. So that's ongoing work. In all of this, in addition to learning Plutus and Cardano development together, we also have this opportunity to just test drive some governance systems, and that's an exciting thing that we get to do today. Juan is going to give us a short presentation on a component he was working at. This is project number 15 that was posted on GPTE. And the idea here is for people to have a chance to learn from what Juan created, to ask questions about it, and then we're practicing with a trusted consent process, right? To ask people if there's any legitimate objections to distributing this project. And this is an early stage of kind of a governance structure that we're testing here at Gimbal Lab. So we're going to be refining it as we go. Looking forward to learning both some development ideas today and also starting to bootstrap this governance process. After Juan presents, I have a presentation about some work I've been doing around contributor tokens. So excited to share about that as well. But first, Juan, we'll start with you. Screen sharing should be ready to go. Welcome and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, James. I'm glad to be here. So I try to share my screen. Is it working?
Yep, looks good here.
Okay, then I can go on. Okay, this is a small overview of the project. This is project 15, and it's a project overview page. The data is from this page. So in dashboard, here in the description, we have some instruction, and we can read some tips to do it. So I took the data from here of this tab, view transaction by project, and this was the raw data. So here we can see the project number and its transaction to the scroll from the contributors. So this is this is ugly. It's too many data here, and this project is how to present this data in a meaningful way. So I don't know, maybe here is it's already in production, no? Here. Okay, this is with production.
Yeah, that's right. I went ahead and put this up. So you've got on the main branch of the project, there's the current pre-prod network. So that's what you'll probably see on your local host. There's a little bit more data to show. And then the mainnet version is already deployed right here.
Yes. Yes. I don't know why I can't. Here is the pre-production data. So it's more data, but okay, we can see maybe here. Later we can see the production data. It's real. This is with test transaction, but this is the page. We can. I think there isn't any link in the main page, but if we write the complete URL with project status, we can come here to this page. So in this page, we have a list with all projects in the instance. We can see an overview for each project with basic data like commitments, distributions, and status. So you can also order the fields with the header. So here we can see how many commitment and distribution is in a project. We can see also the status, is it open or not. Here we can see this project allows multiple commitments, so it's all open. And when you are not allowed to do multiple commitments, when you do one distribution, the project is already closed, so you can't commit again to this project. So here we can see we have a little arrow here we can push, and then here is expands, and we can see a list of all contribution token and the date of each commitment and distribution, so we can see the state of each commitment. So another nice feature, you can put your mouse over the date, and you can see also the time, date time. So I think it's basically this. You can also click on the project ID, and this forward you to the project. So I don't know, James, if you want to know more about the technicals about this table.
I think that's a great overview, and that's kind of a question I have for everybody here. So this is a live repo that anybody can go review the code. And so if you're familiar with the project, you know that now in the pages directory, there's a new subdirectory called project-status. And like Juan said, there's not yet a link to this route anywhere, but that's easy to add to the nav bar or anywhere else we see fit. How do people feel? Is this overview of the end result sufficient, or would it be helpful to take a deeper dive into the source code? Any strong opinions?
Man, I'll look at anything once.
Sorry?
I'm inclined to say that this is enough, right? Like showing the end result is really good, and opening it up to questions, I think, is my instinct. But if anybody has specific questions about the source code, then we could go that way. Does anybody have any wows, anything you're impressed by with what Juan built, or anything you're wondering about?
No,
Well,
I like it.
I see thumbs up, I see hearts. I'm just blown away by it. I'm so fired up,
Thank
man. It's really good.
I
Thanks.
think
If you can guys hear me, I don't know, but my connection is good. I
Hey,
wondered,
Mix.
is this like I don't think this is scalable, because if the project goes, let's say 50 or 100 projects, this page goes a long way. So don't you think we need to make a way to shorten, or I don't know, making page, like first page and each page 25 per se or something? But already it's amazing, and I think the utility of this information can help for understanding of the same status that I mean, controlling the whole process is really good by doing this. And kudos to Juan for making that raw data to something usable and beautiful. But I think we need to add pages too. That's why my comment is.
Maybe some sort by would be good, like sort by status open?
Yes, we can short, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, this is a table framework, and this is a famous one. Is from TimeStack. So they abstracts you of all the logic behind column ordering, groups, binding, and all this stuff. And for the question of Alex, I think why we don't put pagination to this report is because it's a little bit tricky to do that, because we receive the transaction data from the blockchain. So you need to retrieve all data always, because you don't have the complete view else. So I don't know, maybe with GraphQL we can do some complex query to the metadata, but the complex is exponential to do that. So yes and no.
Yeah, yeah. But it raises a set of new opportunities, right? So I can certainly see that there will be cases where we want pagination here. Like you said, it's a little bit complex when we're querying the blockchain, but this perhaps leads us to an understanding of why maybe we want to move towards implementing some kind of indexer, right? We could have Kupo, for example, just watching either the contract address or a specific metadata key, filtering the data for us, and then we can be pulling this data from a more localized specific store like that, which would then in turn make easier some of this advanced functionality, right? So this is beautiful. I think what you've done here helps us to better visualize some of those possible next steps and could lead us to writing some next project descriptions. I love that the table is sortable. I saw that React table library using also has filtering, which is something that we may choose to implement on a page like this. And this reminds me also of some of the experiments that Nelson has been doing with a streamlined version of GPTE, where maybe we realize that this is just a better view in general of getting an overview on all those projects. So a lot of really cool follow-up concerns here. I think this is great for getting us started. Hey, what do you think? Yeah, Yuli, I agree. Yeah, that could be a good next step.
Yeah, my concern was, I suppose, similar to that which Mix and Adrian have highlighted, which is just scalability. Because to me, in thinking about all this, I've been thinking about discoverability, accessibility, and scalability, because in a way, one needs to think about different audiences here. Such an implementation is awesome if the audience remains small and it remains more of a technical audience, who don't mind, sort of like within a Git repository, having all the stuff really kind of cramped together in the same environment. But when you're talking about accessibility and a broader audience, some people may, like the sort of tweet equivalent, right, at the surface, right? And then once they have that buy-in, right, where, once they're like, okay, this is relevant to me, I want to be able to dig into this, for them to then be able to go ahead and dig deeper, that then kind of becomes a different kind of presentation. In a way, it's a bit like with directories, do you have them shallow or do you have them deep kind of thing, right? Yeah. So I a few weeks or days, weeks, last week maybe, maybe the week before that, I sketched out some ideas. If you have like 5 minutes, I could share some thoughts around how I have been thinking about it.
I love it. Yeah, let's transition to that in between this presentation and what I've got about contributor tokens. That's great.
Awesome.
On the scalability note, this is another chance to revisit what I hope we can accomplish with GPTE, right? One approach to this work is for this single instance to become a Cardano implementation of something like Gitcoin, for example. And if that was the goal, then it would be really urgent, right? To get pagination working on this list right here that could end up being really long. But keep in mind what we're actually trying to build here. Not a single monolithic GPTE instance that covers all possible work that people might do, but a project that people can instantiate with their own rules and indeed keep it small. And I'm wondering what's the biggest an individual instance is ever going to get, right? We're already talking about distinguishing this one, which is where people coming out of Plutus PBL can start contributing to this project itself, from a different instance of GPTE that will be focused on general contributors to Gimbal Labs and might have a lot of less technical tasks on the list of projects, right? So keep in mind that goal. And so, yeah, like some of those, it may still be really valuable to have pagination. Indexers, I think we have to explore it and look at how that plugs into this, which in turn becomes something we can teach about in the Plutus PBL course. But then all of this leads to kind of a reframing, of your question about discoverability. How will we create effective pathways to people discovering good tasks across many instances of GPTE? I think is the most fascinating, right? There's going to be an instance of this for mesh. There's going to be an instance of this for the handshake work. We've already got, like I said, these two instances inside of Gimbal Labs. And then, for example, forks of Gimbal Labs who are working on, new translations of the PPBL course will also have instances of this running. So you can see it, in the next several months, we will see several live instances of this. And I'm really curious about how we can investigate discoverability together. How do you create a way for people to look across several instances and find the thing they want to look at is really compelling. I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, your tables have one audience, right? But maybe they're not the only way to look. So maybe A has something to say about that. Coloring, absolutely, we can play around with that. Difficulty rating, yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because that is also a form of governance, right? Who decides on the difficulty rating of a project, and would people agree? If you asked several different people to assess difficulty of a project and assign it that label, would there be consensus on what we decide to put there, right? So I think that's a conversation for as we start adding additional projects. One way to implicitly share the perceived difficulty of a project is by the amount of rewards we attach to it, right? Some are going to have more and some are going to have less. presumably the more difficult projects will have greater rewards attached. But maybe we do need to introduce a classification system. I would just say from the beginning that anytime we add classification systems, we are imposing new hierarchical structures, right? There's the people who do the classifying, and then the people who are subjects to that classifying structure. So I just want us to pay attention to that together. Before we move to A though, right? So this was project number 15, create, and you'll see this in some of the other projects. It says create an effective way to view the status of projects, with the disclaimer that effectiveness is clearly subjective, right? So everybody here might have a different opinion of what it would mean to effectively share project status. But what do you think? Is this sufficient for calling this initial task complete? And would anybody have any objections to this project being distributed to one? Cool. Yeah, someday it'll get interesting, right? We're still in the polite and getting to know each other phase. I have absolutely no objections to this, but I'm eager for us to build trust together towards the point that when somebody has an objection, they feel like it's a safe place to make that, and that's something we can only do by practicing this together. So thanks for the chance. Juan, awesome, man, and thanks for jumping in here to present this. It means a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, James, for the opportunity.
Hey, you've got some designs for us. Should we take a look?
Sure. Still sketchy, or in sketch format. So I've shared it in the chat because I refused to download the Zoom app. So I'm gonna I suppose try and
I'm happy to share screen on my end, and you can just lead me around too.
awesome. And actually what I can do, anyone else can hop over to the Figma file,
Yeah.
and I'll just get everyone to follow me around. That's
Nice.
something which I think Figma can do that Miro isn't.
It's easy for me to follow you. What do I have to double click here?
Yeah, actually, if I come here and say everyone follow me, let's see. There I am. Spotlight me. Waiting for followers. There we go. Hey, 4 followers.
There we go.
Okay.
That looks good.
Yeah,
I don't know,
awesome.
get rid of
Okay.
this banner here. Hold on. Let me see if this doesn't mess us up too much. Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. Could I just let's see. All right.
Hey,
Spotlight.
there you go.
All right,
Cool.
we're
Actually,
good.
what you can do is hold down or just within a blank space, right click to hide the UI on the sides.
We're here.
No, just within any blank space. Yeah. There you go. Show hide. Yeah. It shows you
Beautiful. Thanks.
there we go. Okay. Awesome. Cool. I won't dwell too long on it. I'll try and sort of rush through, and then we can sort of have any questions at a later stage. So this diagram most should be familiar with. I'll come back to this a little bit later, but what I would want to highlight there is basically me mapping this idea, which I'll expand on later on, of asset creation, action initiated, and branch merged. which links to, the sort of different colors right there. So where it started out was way back when the cards were designed in this particular way, which I think was maybe 2 weeks ago. This is before Yuli's super fast redesign. Yeah, so I just kind of, went from this, recreated the whole card in order to just, break it down into its atomic bits to understand what the different bits were and to sort of get a better understanding of the hierarchy and so on. So I did that, and also down here sort of, listed the different categories which the different cards were under. So it was at this stage, I believe, that I realized in thinking about this notion here, that I'd shared, I think, 2 weeks back, of taking a sentence or two paragraphs basically, up top saying, I'm looking to learn how I can build out components, basically framing it in a way where the individual is talking about what they want to accomplish. And then at the bottom, what was that? Oh, okay. I thought someone said something. And then at the bottom, basically their background, right? And then at this point, I was thinking of it as being, a solo card with the option to fork it or to see versions, the historical versions of how this person has iterated, the text inside the card. But then it occurred to me that this idea of hashtags, because I was kind of, designing this and sort of trying to figure out within GitLab how navigation works in the best way in trying to surface things. And I realized actually if one was to, add a hash or present keywords as hashtags, it made a lot more sense to do that, because from a discoverability standpoint, you could then, within, say, a particular profile or within a particular repository, you could, sort of have a whole bunch of hashtags which, can help you actually get to specifically what you want, and it's quite scalable. And yeah, I put this there. James, I should actually credit this to James. I think it's a nice little saying. Okay, yeah, so that's why, I sort of started out, and then I iterated, started out with, your usual kind of, design of a card, with the tokens down here, and then the hashtags at the bottom. Yes, to here. So I realized that actually what I could do is take away from the idea of having a sentence, and just make that basically a whole bunch of keywords. So, what the person's looking to learn or is working on, that could be broken down in terms of just keywords, and also the history, right? The skill set that they have could also be so. So that was down here. So I decided, actually, tell you what, I'll take inspiration from a fraction and have a numerator and a denominator. And so that kind of led to this other design. And so that brings us to here. And as you can see, this is what I'd mentioned before. Like, this is what I'm optimizing for: accessibility, discoverability, and actionability. And so you'll see how those break down in a moment. So here, as I said, we've got the numerator, right, which is the top section, and
Hey,
the denominator at the bottom.
A,
Yep. Yep.
Hey, I'm not sure if it's just the network because of running Figma and like the Zoom at the same time, but the sound is coming through a little strange on your end. Is there anything in the hardware that might be
Okay,
causing-
I'll just close a few things here. Hopefully, let me know if it's getting any better.
All right.
Is it still the same?
Ooh, that's better. Pending. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah,
Thanks.
just let me know in the next few seconds. Okay, where was I? Oh, actually, I'll tell you what, just give me a moment. I'll close a bunch of Safari windows.
Yeah, it's still happening
Maybe.
a little bit, but it might have improved a bit.
Okay, I think they ought to improve a lot more now because I've basically closed everything else. And I'm right next to the router, so cool. Okay, so I'll carry on here. Yeah, let me know if the crappy quality persists. So numerator, denominator, and then this middle section just has some additional stuff here. So an indicator of whether this card belongs to the context of actor, action, and asset. I'll expand on those in a moment. And then a label, which again, communicates which category of those three things it belongs to. And then here you've got a call to action. Okay, so the different, I suppose, overarching categories here, as I mentioned, are actor, action, and asset. There's a larger scope to my thinking here. This kind of just expands on this idea of what I like to call, or what I've been calling for a moment, an agent-guided entity, which is like an evolution of the notion of DAOs. To me, DAOs are quite sort of socialist slash communist, and I was like, okay, what can be the libertarian equivalent kind of thing? And so I've kind of been just working on this. And so within the superset, which is the agent guided identity, you've got actors, actions, and assets as subsets within that. Again, that's something that I can expand on later on. But I just want to mention that to give some context to what's going on over here. So yeah, the idea here is that you've got these different categories with different calls to action. The first one, which pertains to the actor, right? So this is obviously the actor is a person. They have actions which pertain to them and assets also which that pertain to them. So the actions in this case are skill sets which they have, and then the assets are projects which they're working on. And in terms of the history here, basically it's just it would, if the idea is you'd click on this, and in the beginning I would sort of point you to the commitment history, sort of the version history page within GitLab. At some future point, it might be something richer, which happens more on a user friendly web interface. But the idea there is for you to see all the sort of historical actions. In a way, it's a bit like a resume or a CV. And also, again, because of the keywords, someone who's looking for someone with a particular skill set or action, or someone who's worked on a particular asset, again, like being able to, at a granular level, being able to discover that, I think, is quite valuable. And then in terms of action, basically actions are pretty straightforward. At the top, you've got the actors who are, currently working on this particular action, right? You've got the action name down there. And then you've got the call to action, which is create a branch. Oh, sorry. Beneath it, you've got the different assets which this particular action falls under. In some cases, it might just be one particular asset that this particular action, falls under, but in some cases it might be more. Yeah, so you're able to then, create a branch, which then, creates a new branch for you, and you're able to, do a whole bunch of work. And then once you're done, you're able to merge it, which creates, again, the opportunity to be able to have finality to said action. And then last but not least, you've got an asset, again with the asset name there, and the call to action is to subscribe, right? So you've got all these different projects, and the key thing is being able to coordinate people, right? So I imagine this being basically an ICS file that you can be able to subscribe to, and yeah, on your calendar, without redesigning the wheel, or reinventing the wheel, just tapping into existing functionality that works, which will help people actually stay on the same page. And then within that, within an asset, you've got actions, right, which are the culmination of, once all those actions are completed, then the asset will arrive at a decent enough checkpoint. The assumption here is that an asset keeps evolving. And then underneath that, you've got the different actors who are working on it. Yeah, so I'll just quickly give, this should take like 2 minutes, examples of sort of different permutations which could be applied to said model. So you've got the ability to have, again, this is inspired by the modular nature of the UTXO, or the EUTXO more specifically, because there are actions here as well. So you can have one actor do a whole bunch of actions to one asset, or a whole bunch of actors do a whole bunch of separate actions, or maybe even the same action to one particular asset. Many actors doing one action to a whole bunch of different assets, or one actor doing one action to a whole bunch of different assets. And two quick examples here are in creating a wallet. You could have an actor who's proficient at everything from copywriting, design the user experience, the user interface, as well as doing the more technical side of things with the transaction building, the transaction signing. And then in this example, you've got 3 different actors, one who's good at copywriting and UX, and then the second one who's good at UI and UX. And again, these are kind of pairs of things which tend to go together or require coordination amongst all the actors. And then the final guy here is working on the TX building and the TX signing, but also contributes to the UX, right? So all of them all contribute to the UX, because that's kind of the thing that all of them need to be on the same page about. So yeah, that's the example of the wallet. And then a slightly different one, second and final example here, is the action of translating, right? So you can have a whole bunch of people who speak different languages, right? Separate people, separate speakers, translating strings, or maybe a specific string, which then applies to different contexts or different assets. In this case, that could be an app or content. Or you could have a multilinguist, right, who's an individual who's doing a whole bunch of translation into a whole bunch of different languages, right, creating assets across different languages. So that's just a kind of a quick overview there's a quick example here of a card which pertains to me. You can see up here my skill sets, and again, these could evolve over time and be searchable and be as granular as I want, etc., etc. The hierarchy of which would be determined by me in how I list them in the README file. And then, yeah, beneath here, you've got what I'm currently sort of working on. And yeah, that is it. Yeah, if that probably took a little bit longer than I hoped that it would, but I hope. Actually, yeah, one quick thing in closing, that would be nice. James, if you could open up this this link here within the screen share. The way that I envisage an implementation, and James and I have spoken about this ages ago, yeah, James, if you could just kind of like click on, you know, the different filters and the sorts to dynamically see how, yeah, the different, in this case, periodic table elements are just sort of shifting, you know, depending on whatever logic one has put in there. Basically, yeah, it's filtering and sorting, which I think, you know, implementing such a thing would help from the you know, accessibility standpoint, and yeah,
Yeah, this is
that's
cool. Yeah, it'd be
yeah,
great to implement this.
and
That'd
discoverability.
be cool.
Yeah, and that's it for me. Thanks for being an awesome audience and listening to that.
No, so that's,
Yeah.
this is awesome. There, I think this, what you shared there, it raises a lot of potential next steps. So personally, I'm eager to digest it and kind of think about what we can apply to the I need a name for it, like the Gimbal Labs local version of GPTE is, I think, is a really cool project where we can test this out. Let's pick up some of those ideas and pick one or two to start implementing at tomorrow's GPTE governance call.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Again, I work in the open, so anyone wanting to contribute or ask questions, you know where you can find me.
It's awesome.
So yeah.
Any immediate questions, thoughts coming out of that? Nix.
I wonder, A, have you thought about the cost of those actions, especially on-chain cost? And do you want to implement that cost into that relationship? Like the shorter path or shorter algorithm or design would be ideal or better, like comparing these two actions. Like two actor wants to do exactly one action, but one of them is shorter or less costly or faster, cheaper, and better. And have you thought about these to implement in this the cost of action?
Oh, you know what? I've realized I should have just put on my headphones earlier, and I think the sound would have been better. But yeah, mix. Yeah,
Faster.
cost is definitely something which, you know, has been top of mind. Yeah, when it comes to actions, the idea is that they will be gradually optimized in order. I mean, in a of in the context of, so right now, obviously, we don't have future side chains will be a thing, and that would with scaling and just, you know, locally without, you know, incurring too much cost. Idea here is right now, not every, well, the assumptions right now before we say we have, so won't be as much in terms of audience and frequency of use. You know, right now we can kind of build moments that different frequencies, obviously they'll gradually, you know, illustrate, hey, situations where, you know, taking on in cost too frequently idea, but also actions aren't script, like, you know, like actions which exist or Steve, yeah, actions could be also, you know, within the illustration, get a transaction. It could, right? You could, which then, you know, is for the pleasure of or maybe like a deposit or something. doesn't need to be the case, right? Because there will be a Git, and ideas, you know, the point where the merge happens, and then there's, you know, some sort of remuneration. But again, this kind of out of implementing Git, you know, into the future with being a management system, however that manifests. Yes.
Hey, we're missing about a
okay.
quarter of your words right now. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, the sound is a little bit laggy or something. But hey, but to bring us back to this, so at this,
Yeah.
this is a really big conversation, right? What you're proposing is a multi-stage implementation and modeling costs. And this is Mix, I'm sorry if I sounded like I was dismissing the question of tagging and hierarchies. I don't want to do that. What I mean to say is that, yes, there is going to need to be some kind of classification system, and we should just understand that as an act of governance, and we should create scenarios for ourselves where we can, minimize speculation and maximize the amount of empirical understanding that we are growing together. Okay, so with everything, what we want to do is never say, this is done, right? So please, I hope that in everything everybody sees, you recognize the unfinished work, the unanswered questions, and our goal as educators is for those incomplete, unanswered elements to delight us, right? To never back down from those. We want to embrace all of them. And so there's I think what A has laid out is a project that will be really exciting to start working on. What's here so far is insufficient, and it raises all sorts of questions, right? Among them, should this data really be on chain? What kind of privacy concerns do we raise by posting this data this way? This is an early experiment designed to make these questions tangible to us in a way that, like talking about it and trying to design the perfect system before building it would not allow us to do. Okay, so keep all of these questions in mind. Keep questions of discoverability. I mean, if this page right here worked more like that isotope demo that you just shared with us, I think that's such a beautiful place to go. Let's add some experiments for that and start implementing that. And let's always pay attention to next questions. And at the very same time, let's use this live coding time to ground ourselves in what is ongoing right now. So it can always lead to people developing new understanding, developing some compelling action steps. And I think there's going to be some longer conversations to come about how we create a design in the background that leads to those principles you just laid out, discoverability, and people being able to participate in the right thing. I like your use of the word agent and actor instead of user. Well noted.
Yeah, the intent was to sort of tap into the whole principal agent problem idea, but yeah.
I've been trying to never use the word user when I write docs or do things. It's a hard change to never use that term. But.
Same. Appreciate you being conscious of that.
So with all this in mind, actually, I'm excited just to share a little bit once again to kind of give people something empirical to start thinking about. And what I have for you is a very much imperfect system, right? In the very same way, this is not perfect. This is not going to look like this. The data that we're putting on chain we're going to refine it, and we're going to figure out how to balance discoverability and shareability, right? So people can make their own decisions with an appropriate amount of privacy in the long term, right? So here we have our, we describe ourselves by our mastery in the course and number of contributions. And as I've showed before, this is living in some on-chain inline data that can be changed over time. I just distributed Juan's project, so he's got a 1 in his contribution data now. Now, in a related project, I've mentioned that I'm working with 1 up, 1 down, and I'm eager to bring people into this project. The reason I haven't rushed to do that is this is really a speculative project for me. There's no compensation yet for this, and so I want to be sensitive to asking for contributions where there isn't really a budget for it. But if anybody wants to understand this project more, I'm happy to connect on it anytime and bring you into the work. But this is a refinement of the system that is initially demonstrated right here. Okay, we're using contributor token pairs to capture some relevant information. And we already recognize that we're not going to even put this much personal identifying information on chain. Okay, so the system somehow uses token names to match 2 parties, a mentor, right, who has signed up to provide mentorship, and a mentee who's the client of the platform receiving that mentorship. But for proof of concept purposes, I just use these like easily human readable token names to capture this. And we have the ability to mint a mentor token pair. This creates 2 tokens with the same policy ID, one that goes to an agent or actor wallet, the other that goes to a contract address, which we're calling the mentor reference address, which holds the token and the datum associated with that mentor. We can mint a mentee token that behaves exactly the same way with a different policy ID from the mentor and a different mentor reference address than a mentee reference address that's different from the mentor reference address. And then we can see existing lists of tokens. So here's our mentors that are in the system. These are the token names at the mentor reference address. They have a 100 prefix, just like in the GPTE implementation of contributor tokens. You have that 100 prefix at the contract address and a 222 prefix of the same contract in each actor's wallet. Now I'll show you the on-chain data in just a moment. Actually, let me start my, I need to start my pre-prod node for just a sec. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that data will be visible when we go to look at it in just a moment. And so this is just a front end visualization of, here is a match that's been proposed to Harriet. The match is between Harriet, the mentor, and Isabella, the mentee. And it has just some identifier. This could be a UUID. This could be some hash of the relationship, or we might find out that it's unnecessary to include this field right here. But essentially what happens is that there's a pair of contracts, a mentor and a mentee reference validator, that with certain rules allow this match to move through the system as different actors make transactions. Okay, and so you can see an example of this here. Here, Isabella, the mentee, is awaiting Harriet to approve, to say, yes, I want to participate in that match. So we can see this. This is the same match right here that Harriet is able to approve, and Isabella is waiting for that approval. here's an example of a match that's been initially proposed to Donna, and Donna's next step would be to accept this match, which would change the state here so that she's now awaiting Carol, who would now be able to see that proposed match right here. The entry point to this system is that an admin offers a match to a mentee. That's the first transaction. The second transaction is the mentee accepts that match and passes it to the mentor for proposal. For approval by the mentor. The mentor accepts that, and the match moves to active state for both parties. And then when the match is completed, both parties trigger the closing of the match by providing some feedback to the system. And this is the critical thing I wanted to share today. So I want to take questions on this in just a moment, but I want to point out this bit right here. We're using an admin to trigger the match offer right now, just for testing the system and proving the concept. But the goal of the OUOD platform is they are building an AI-based matching algorithm to match mentors with mentees. That algorithm is what's going to fire this offer match transaction. Okay, so the machine that they're running the AI server on is going to have the admin token, and that's going to be able to basically create new match proposals to mentors in the system. Now, step back from this for just a second. We're building a platform that's going to allow an AI that is facilitated by the owners of the platform, but ideally they'll be hands off of that as it gets up and running. That AI is going to enter the possible match into a system where then each party has the agency to say, yes, I accept that match. And then, well, mentee says, yes, I accept that match, right? Mentor says, yes, I accept that match, with no transactions being fired by the people at the organization running this system, right? So at a really high level, I'm really excited to explore this with everybody, how this creates a P2P matching pipeline. And then the records of those matches create some kind of reputation. Okay, right here you can see that we're delivering a count of those completed matches. But this is just the length of a list of datum that we could look at. And that datum is a list of match IDs that look like this. So early, this raises questions. There's unfinished work here and some philosophical stuff we got to talk about, some technical things to better understand. But I'm really excited about the progress that we're making here in terms of pairing people up and having them play the roles of kind of moving through a relationship together. Let me pause there. This is the first time I've tried to really talk this through with anybody. I've kind of been heads down working on it for a couple of days. But what makes sense so far, and what's confusing? What questions do you have? Hey, what do you think?
Is the sound better now?
Sounds good so far. I'll let you know if it starts
Okay.
crackling again.
All right, awesome. I think I've been able to figure out how I can tweak that. Okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing. It gives a little bit more context to the code that that you were working on the other day. And just kind of thinking through. Yeah, so my question is, I'm assuming that from an AI standpoint, the recommendation engine, the idea, as you just mentioned, was to be a bit hands-off, which makes sense, right? In trying to create, such an entity that can sort of run by itself. But obviously, I'm assuming that the team will, be maintaining it gradually, and every action that is taken, true or false, right, of a match that it suggests will then go back to feed its to improve the model, right? Sort of like Tesla's self-driving. Once you take control of it, like, or as they say, every action or every input is error, right? So, well, but in this case, not every input, right? Because if someone says no, that if a mentee gets a suggestion for mentor, if I've got that right, is that, yeah, and they say no, then obviously that then becomes input to the machine. But if
Yes.
not, then it's just
Bingo.
fine.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, I'm curious whether there's an ongoing relationship, like is the idea that there's a fixed amount of time, or are there checkpoints or milestones in said relationship and expectations of either party, kind of thing? Like, yeah, how is
Very,
that being
very
thought
good.
about?
Yeah, excellent. And so just back when I started talking to Juliana, one of the founders at One Up, One Down, some of you might know her from Town Hall. I was having a lot of conversations with different people who were working on mentorship concepts. And some of those concepts that people were drawing up were really complicated. And what drew me to this work is the elegance of the system they were trying to create, right? And Juliana's done more research on mentorship than anybody I've ever met. And where it's led her to is that you need to make the commitment feel light, right? If you start a mentorship relationship by having both parties like fill out pages of biographical data. So here, this kind of goes back to the classifying question. People reject that system. And so what One Up, One Down proposes is, let's see if we can get people to commit to meeting 4 times in a 3-month time frame. That's all. Okay. Now, so regarding checkpoints, there will be a little feedback form that is not on-chain data or is even fed to the AI at first after each meeting, right? They want to learn as they build their platform by collecting a small appropriate amount of feedback after each meeting. The only thing that is actually going to get fed back to the AI at first is a numerical rating, whatever success rating of the mentorship after it's completed. And whether, I don't know if that's going to be on a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale, doesn't really matter, right? And that rating from both parties is going to go back to the AI to help in decision making. Now, of course, in onboarding to this system, some amount of biographical data will be shared by the parties. I'm going to leave it to One Up, One Down to share what they want to about their platform. Okay. But what I find interesting is exactly what you just said. If a match is not completed, right, those 4 meetings are not completed, that's data that will go on chain. Okay, here's a match that was started, but for whatever reason, not completed or not even accepted in the first place by these parties. That's really valuable information to help out, right? The rating, same thing. And so what this allows us to do is at the end of the match, recognizing, hey, look, there is direct value to this system of these parties to a match providing some feedback, and we can incentivize that, right? In order to grow your reputation, the deal you're making to use this system is that you'll provide a single number, right? A feedback rating after the end of the match, which will then be used to improve the system over time. And this generalizes, I think, to another concept that's going to be, it's already on a lot of people's minds, right? These concepts of data sovereignty, Could you build a system that is competitive with something like Google, but where every individual actor owns and make decisions about what data they share at what time? Like, I know people are thinking about that and working on it. From a practical perspective, I haven't yet seen a financial model that would be, worth the trouble to the end user of making all these micro decisions, because even though Google might rake in billions and billions of dollars, for any individual end user, what would that equate to, right, in a given year? So there's these concerns. But here, this is a direct utility, right? This little piece of data helps this AI get better at matching the right mentor with the right mentee. And as such, if you want to participate in it, we hope that that feels like a valuable trade to you. You build up your reputation in the system, and you help the system get better at matching people as we go. If this is successful, I think that this model can be reapplied. I'm excited to use it directly within PPBL, right? Matching people who can be the mentor for a given Plutus topic, for example.
Cool. Thank you for that context and feedback. Yeah, I think it would be cool to see where this goes. I think my quick thoughts just on what you just said. I think if the feedback loop is in months, with this, with regards to once the mentorship has finished, 3, if I caught what you said right. I suspect that over time they're going to come to realize that closing, especially if you have a small group of people, closing that feedback loop sooner rather than later makes a lot more sense, because then the model becomes a lot better, and it sort of it starts to gain a better knowledge of the different skill sets and mapping, sort of like from a graph standpoint. But yeah, I'm glad that such activity is happening, because I'm kind of exploring similar stuff. And but yeah, Darth Vader,
I'm
take it
so
away.
pumped. I feel the one thing that's guaranteed is we're going to learn really useful stuff from this project, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's it. I feel so confident in that. What are we going to learn? No idea. That's why we got to do it. So it's exciting, cool opportunity.
Yeah. All right,
Piotr,
Darth
what do you
Vader.
think?
I just gonna ask a question. What's the target audience for this project?
This is One Up, One Down is a platform. I think it's a .com. Maybe .org. There we go. So, right, building trusted relationships through mentorship. We are really aligned, because this relationships piece, right? This is what we're really trying to build with PPBL too. Their target audience is women in business at first, but they recognize that the model could be applied to different groups. And that too is where I see alignment with GPTE, right? They're not trying to build one monolithic mentorship platform for everyone. They're focused on women in business first. And we recognize that as that system comes online, everybody here can probably imagine a list of different audiences for a platform like this.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
So I've been playing around, trying to get this thing to work. And it's fun. It's really satisfying to have these transactions working. I haven't done much in terms of I'm on mainnet. There's I got the admin transaction working from the front end and the mentee one as well, and a little bit of logic here. So you can see like this wallet doesn't have a mentee token in it. And then there's just some basic conditional rendering here that if somebody has a mentee token, they should be able to see their status. So just simple proof of concept here. I'm not doing the web design for them, but I'm trying to, and I should have said that earlier. I'm really excited about this project because it's helping me build some components for the next Plutus PBL front-end template. So I'm making sure that I understand all these parts of mesh, and I'm really excited to convene a group of people who are building towards that PBL 2023 course together to start creating the next front-end template. So this is kind of some background work for this. It's been really satisfying to get the transactions working. But does anybody like, we could spend a few minutes just going under the hood to give you a preview. Any, would you rather see what these tokens look like from Cardano CLI, get an overview of the Plutus code itself, or think more about the front end in the few minutes we have left? I guess here's one thing that's easy to show. Just speak up if you have questions.
I think the Plutus code would be interesting. Yeah, Sebastian says code as well.
Yeah, let's look at a little bit of code. Let me show you this first. So here's I can make this query. So here's the query that we're using under the hood. We're looking at all the UTXOs at a contract address. In this case, I can drop in the mentee contract address right here. And let's look at what it returns. Okay, so obviously helpful to have the TX hash and index. I think that's a little better. And then we want to see the tokens because we need to know that we need to be able to match the asset in the user's wallet with the asset that's in each UTXO. So there's going to be 2 UTXOs at the contract address right now, 1 each to match these 2 mentees. And you can see in this one, if I look at the asset name, 313030, that's 100. Okay, from hex to string. And so this right here, everything after that 100 is going to be, do I have a little converter open? Everything after that 100 is our token name. So here's Isabella Mentee pre-prod, okay? Then here's the inline datum. And this is the part that really enables a lot of this. And like I mentioned earlier, raises new questions, right? We can put this information here now, and it's much easier to now use datum that can be digested by a validator and also presented in a UI. But just because we can do it, it doesn't mean we should be putting people's personal identifying information in that datum on chain, right? So that's the big question for us. But I want you just to see the shape of this data right here. Yeah, let me pause right there. Any questions at this point? A big breakthrough for me came from Adrian. I just wouldn't have done this without that help last week. So thank you, man. This bit right here. So you see we have fields is an array. And this array has 1, 2, 3, 4 objects in it. Okay. And what was new to me last week, and this opens up all sorts of cool possibilities, is that this constructor right here, 1, with empty fields, this maps to nothing in Plutus Haskell. Okay, so anybody who's familiar with maybe, which can return a just or a nothing, this is how you represent nothing in the constructed data that goes on chain. And then this right here, constructor 0, maps to just. Okay, so here's a nothing in the proposed match field, and here's a maybe, or sorry, here's a just match ID in the active match field, for example. I thought that part was really cool, and I'm excited to now just be able to use maybes going forward in our data types. Z, I saw your hand up for just a sec.
Yeah, sorry, but I think you moved on, so it didn't matter too much. I was just following on from your note about the possible threat vectors or just considerations. And it just reminded me, just in that, I think one of the modules was talking about that, and I realized it feels like something like we are tempted to just mention in passing from time to time, but never really gets embedded into this, how we design things. And I was thinking about the way blockchain's been designed as adversarial by design, right? So when we come to first principles of why we're attracted to the whole space in the first place is because it was like, hey, we can't trust everybody. We've got to make something where we think about adversaries and everything. And yet somehow when we've got to this higher level, that's somehow become less and less put into how we're doing, because it's not exciting, it's not fun. I know I've talked about this before, but it's just something I'm thinking about, like, how do we embed that into the conversation so that it's not so much a side thing, but it's like, I don't know, like, is it worth, for instance, saying we by definition will always think, what's the worst way somebody could use this, right? And it's not seen as something like somebody's trying to knock it down, but that's because we're in blockchain. We want these things to eventually be worth or holding. I'm involved in some projects. They want us to build some tools which is going to hold, millions of dollars or something, but everybody wants to do it on the cheap. And I'm like, we're not prepared to do that. I don't want to build a system which is fragile when whole countries' economies might be relying on this, especially they talk about projects in Africa. So anyway, sorry, loads of things there, but just wanted to throw 100%.
That 100%. No, you're exactly right, right? So I'm coming at it from a particular perspective, and y'all got to know this about me, okay? My goal is to force issues. I want to create scenarios where it becomes real to us, these questions of attack vectors. Because having been doing this for 2.5 years full time now, what I've found is that we could sit and talk for the next 6 months about possible attack vectors and never do anything. And I just wouldn't be satisfied if we did that. So my intention is to put things out there and for us to say, holy shit, that's scary. This is urgent that we got to do something about it now. Okay. And I'm hoping this is just my hypothesis. I might be wrong. I'm hoping that by creating these systems, it kind of increases the reality of these scenarios to us so that we can more effectively kind of jump in and work with a sense of reality to it. Okay. So again, that is not the only approach. And I expect that approach doesn't work for everybody. That's totally fine. The reason I'm saying this is you can count on me to keep creating those scenarios that, hey, listen, there's real work to do here. And if any of this stuff feels like it needs to be improved, right, in order to make it actually, to bring real safe utility to the world, then I'll feel like mission accomplished, right? Let's force those issues. Let's feel that sense of reality, feel that sense of urgency, and then start building towards a better system together. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think it's also just about maybe like pairing up, because it's not, I wasn't sort of saying don't do it that way. It's great. We're all jumping in, we're mixing it. Just to balance that when we want to make the real production part of us, because some of the threat vectors aren't obvious. I guess that's what I'm coming to, is like, it will be invested time thinking of the non-obvious ways that these things might be actually, and that's what I'm more worried about. I think like seeing the sort of big sexy, hey, I don't want my, details of how many things or my name in there is much easier than going, wait a minute, if somebody did a different kind of redeemer and just this particular,
Yes, yeah. Well, that raises, I mean, the testing is fascinating. We got some years ahead of good work on building actual testing and audit suites. So having context into which to do that work and people to do it with is, I hope, what we're building here.
Are we in next best steps territory right now?
We totally are. I was going to hand it off
Okay.
to Steve for last words and then talk next steps.
Cool,
Thanks. Yeah, we're a few minutes behind that territory. Thanks for that. Steve, what do you think?
Well, I really like that point that Z made, and I think the other thing that kind of balances that as we think about this and build out more sophisticated things is we can't be responsible for individuals, right? And we have to think about it from a game theory, adversarial actor kind of perspective. But people have the other side of the coin of this space, at that first principle layer is the individual has to take responsibility for their own shit. And so like when we start building out these things, and I know nobody really thinks like this here, but when we talk about tendencies and what we're trying to guard against or do for users, I don't think that I think we have to guard against trying to be somebody's mother in this space. Like nobody gets to a spot like this and we can't worry about their competence. You know what I'm saying?
100%. And this is a direct argument for writing learning targets that start with the words I can, and for project-based learning. And this applies to parenting, this applies to teaching, and it applies to the work we're doing. What's our goal? To maximize agency of as many people as possible. We live in a world where too many people can't imagine themselves as agents in history, right? There's a lot of people who feel victimized. There's a lot of people who are waiting for somebody else to do something. And what's going to move possibility can only be more people recognizing the agency that they have. And so that's, I agree completely, Steve. We're not gonna mother people, but we are gonna offer people those critical words. I can, with as clear a concept as we can provide to follow that. Hey, if you're here, we're gonna help you make these statements true. I can do this, I can do that, right? And as we do, how do children learn? They learn through projects, they learn by doing stuff. Right. And so we're hopefully what we are doing is providing those places for people to get that agency that I think you're talking about. And if it catches on, we're not going to have to mother anybody because it'll just be undeniable what the possibility is. Hope that context makes sense. When it comes to next steps, that's the critical piece. So we do, thank you for this session today, a chance to share out. I'm really glad that we got to hear from 3 different projects, Juan's work, A's work, thinking about how to extend and generalize from the GPTE, and then what I'm working on right here. And keep in mind that everybody's welcome to present any Wednesday. If you're working on something, open invitation, please just ask to be on the agenda or show up with something. And if you're completing a project in the GPTE, you can count on me to reach out to you to ask you to present it here. And I want to shout out Juan once again for jumping in. I know that my request didn't make you comfortable at first, and I really appreciate you jumping in to say it yourself and share that with us. On Thursdays at these PPBL sessions, we've been talking GPTE governance, and I'm really excited to walk around the rest of today with some of the concepts that A shared and start thinking about how we can implement towards that tomorrow, and we can think about next steps together. And then finally, Plutus PBL planning is in full swing. So I hope people can join the Tuesday 1930 UTC meeting. But if that's a time that doesn't work for you, I know that's very late for people on the Eastern Hemisphere. Please let me know, because I want to include you in that work. So more to come. I'll set up a new Discord channel in the next week or so. But just be in touch if you want to be involved in the PPBL planning. And Mix and Alex are doing some leading work and helping us start to differentiate between the work that needs to be done there. Anybody else have next steps you want to name? Feel free to jump in. I'll pass it to A first.
Yeah, I suppose it's a form of next steps. Just going back to Juan's contribution, he mentioned using a particular tool. I forget the name of it, but I think it would be cool as perhaps one of the prerequisites is showing some documentation. I know people hate documentation. I do as well. I just kind of work, as I go, but being able to just kind of like show your thinking and its development, I think that's really helpful. Because for example, even me in working on the thing that I presented, I was conscious of implementing it, being aware of what the hell is the oh man, the framework that's being used,
React, Chakra.
Chakra, that's it. Yeah, Chakra. I found a Chakra plugin that goes from Figma, straight into sort of Chakra
Yeah, I
specific
saw that.
code. Yeah, but yeah, it's paid for, and I wasn't entirely sure whether it makes sense to pursue. But one of those, like in me kind of, if I was to request to to get like gimbals, or to claim to have met any outstanding task or bounty, I think a reasonable prerequisite is just like showing your homework kind of thing. That's pretty much it.
I love it. Steve and I stayed up late on Monday night starting a comprehensive documentation project that I'm really excited to bring to everybody. We're beyond the time where the Gimbal Labs docs need to be comprehensive, beautiful, searchable, guide people to get to where they need to be in as short a time as possible. So that's absolutely urgent work. I'm really excited to ask people for help on that very soon. Juan, last words.
Hello. I did some improvement based in the people feedback. I didn't read the chat, so later I read it and I did some improvement, but I didn't did the pull request.
Good.
So if you want, I can share quick.
Excellent. Yeah, we're over time for this meeting right now. But if you submit that merge request, and I'll put up a link so people can review it. But come back anytime. We're trying really hard to make sure that these meetings end at least close to on time, to really respect.
Okay. I was a little bit guilty because I didn't read the chat.
No, it's awesome. Thanks for the fast turnaround on that. That's incredible. It's so exciting to be building momentum together on this project, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Then I do the pull request. Don't worry. Thank you.
All right. I'm grateful for you all. Thanks for taking the time to be here today. I hope that if you're having thoughts, that you unmute and share them in the weeks to come. Looking forward to all of it with you. See you soon.
See you.